Hey there, Internet friends. Trevor Starkey here, welcoming you to our very first Patreon Early Access episode of That Nerdy Site Show. This is the Patreon episode for November of 2019. So, if you are a patron, you're getting to hear it a month before everybody else. It'll go live end of December for everybody else. So, if you're joining us at the end of December and you were like, "Oh, I really would have liked to have heard this a month ago," go support us on Patreon. Patreon.com/thatnerdysite. That Nerdy Site show is a weekly show where the team from That Nerdy Site gets together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. These monthly shows are going to be a little bit more focused on kind of a more topic of the show kind of episode. Let's dive right in. Joining me for this month's episode, we have Cameron Abbott.
What's going on, nerds?
What's going on, you Cameron Abbott nerd? And Frank Bazzani.
What's up, nerds?
What's up? I like that. Like we've just totally owned nerds. It's one of the things I really wanted to happen with this site. So I'm glad that we've kind of got that going for us. If you like what you hear, you can always rate, review, like, subscribe, pretty much everywhere you can in podcast form. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify. Hopefully, we're on many other things. I'm gonna have to figure out just logistically how to make this episode available to only our patrons for a month. Because, I haven't had to do that yet. Okay. Well, yeah, fun. Hooray. Let us quickly, I want to give a shout out to the monthly Patreon producer, James L., who joined us here at the end of November. So get him a shout out just in time for this episode.
And we'll
And
edit it out if your payment doesn't go through.
yeah, I mean, there have been a couple that we've shouted out and then they've like withdrawn their pledges in this first month, and I'm like, ah, oh, dang it. maybe we should have made it so we don't shout them out until they get charged. But I'm acting in good faith, and if worst comes to worse, they get a shout out that they never actually end up giving us any money for. Whatever, no big deal. Anyway, so we are recording this the day after Thanksgiving, so I figured very appropriate to kind of focus on like Thanksgiving memories and Thanksgiving stories. We haven't really talked about if you guys have any particular Thanksgiving stories or memories, but I figure we can dive right in. I certainly do if all else fails. We talked a little bit, Cameron, in the regular weekly episode that we recorded right before this. It was a very eventful Thanksgiving for you this year because of kind of your life status. So how was that? How did that all go for you?
Well, it was my first Thanksgiving out publicly as being abrosexual. I literally like less than a month ago told my parents. My siblings understood like that I had this stuff going on during my middle sister, who I actually live with, who I rent a room from, her and her husband. She's known longer than any of my other siblings. She kind of actually is known longer than almost anybody in my life. But so she's known for a long time that like things weren't like I was still wondering what was going what I was coming to a realization probably like 7 or 8 years ago that I really wasn't like everybody else when it came to romance and sex and things like that. So she's known for a long time. My brother, like, basically, like, I said an off comment thing or offhanded comment once, and he pulled me off to a side room probably about 2.5, 3 years ago, and just asked like, "Wait, what do you mean when you said that?" Like, wanting to have a real heart to heart with me to like know if like if this like what was going on with it. And then my oldest sister knew because when all five, like all four, so I'm from a family of 5 kids. I'm fourth out of 5. And so the last time all 5 of us were together, or actually it was a time before that, but all 5 of us were together, we had a sit down where we all kind of like all got on the same page as far as like what it's going to look like us being the 5 siblings going forward in like with my parents. Because when my parents moved back to Arizona, we kind of fell into like my parents would organize things, or that's what we thought, but our parents are so out of practice on that things were falling through the cracks. People weren't getting notified till the day of about like really important things, and it kind of became a real epic just shit show. And so in that discussion, I decided, okay, these are my siblings. We're all going to be on the same page. And the truth is, if I end up gaining a romantic partner in the next year or two, like, this needs to be something that is addressed with them. So I told them at the time. And so coming out fully as, publicly as abrosexual was very empowering this year. It was very, I kind of did a total 180 on talking about my sexuality and like not hiding it. It's been a massive weight off my shoulders. Not having to be too careful about my words anymore. Being closeted for 30 years of your life it's a big transition going forward. But what was really awesome is that this Thanksgiving was the first time in a long time that I just felt really wonderful and empowered and supported by my family in a way that I didn't realize that by hiding it from my parents and hiding it from my family for such a long time made me feel like I wasn't being supported, but it wasn't their fault that I wasn't being supported. It was mine because I wasn't being honest and open. And my parents' reaction, especially my father's, like, I expected it to be a lot rougher, but just 100% total acceptance just was not in the cards, I thought, but it was. And it's careful. You have to be careful about this sort of thing because I do have much younger nieces and nephews, and that's like with how complicated. It's not like, oh, Uncle Cam's gay. You can't, like, it's not just as straightforward. It's that. It's like these kids don't understand the complexities of sexuality, so you can't really explain that to them. So it's just whatever.
I mean, I would say like most like abrosexual in particular, like when you came out, the kind of the day we launched, I remember we were all sitting in Frank's house watching the video kind of after like a long day of streaming and stuff, and I think all of us were like, I don't know what that means, and so we were all having to look it up too, and you also called into the Love, Sex, and Stuff show that Nick and Tim over at Kind of Funny did recently, and they had a very similar reaction where they didn't know what abrosexual was either. So that like one of my like honestly biggest questions to you is I can very much easily identify or see you having identified like what you were going through and what you were encountering and kind of your own identity, but like how did you find out what that like that it actually had a term and what that term was?
So I thought probably for the last probably the last 5 or 6 years, I've kind of considered myself Q questioning. I didn't know what I was because there was a big question of, well, it's not that I'm bi or I'm gay or I'm straight. It's that a large part of my time, like my cognitive understanding of like how I feel about sex is very much, you know, not one way or the other. It's very asexual, and I didn't understand how asexuality could, like, because I'm not asexual, because there are points in my life where I feel very, I do feel sexual attraction, and not only that, but I feel it very strongly. So it's not like I can say, oh, I just kind of like a person, or oh, I'm like romantically interested in a person. There's very strong moments of like, oh, I'm actually very sexually attracted to somebody, but it's not the majority of the time. It's roughly around probably less than 10% of my life. I can calculate that I've said, oh, these are periods of my time where I was interested in somebody in that manner. And like the rest of the time, and that's kind of what unsexy is. I always kind of beat around the bush about what unsexiest comedy meant. And like, what did it mean to be the unsexiest comedian? And it's like, well, I can say these sex things and I don't feel weird or grossed out by them because they mean nothing to me. Like, they don't mean, they're just like whatever. They're just a matter of fact of things that people do. It's not a matter of like personal, like there's no personal connection. There's no emotional connection that I have towards it. And so it's very much this asexual feeling about it. And not knowing, like, asexuality is, like, I've known about it for several years, but, like, I've never been able to categorize myself as that. And so kind of just, like, delving into it, it was, people were coming out, or talking about their coming out day. It was coming out day, and they're talking about their coming out stories. And I was like, you know what? All these people, all my friends, like, such incredible individuals, just are talking about them coming out and, like, the difficulties that they had with it. And I just felt so seen, but I wasn't letting myself be seen in those moments of like people talking about feeling closeted and just coming to terms with that and just realizing there has to be something like with how LGBT has grown in the last, decade alone. I mean, 2009, things were not this open or not this well discussed about LGBT on the wider internet, much less, outside of like Tumblr. And even then, like small portions of Tumblr. Like, LGBT knowledge was just so, it was so hard to understand like what was actually like not people trolling people, like what is this. And so I spent a couple of weeks just kind of like digging up, going through. Funny enough, I went through a bunch of Tumblr stuff, I went through a bunch of Wikipedia stuff, and finally I was just like, oh, here it is, it's right in front of me. I am asexual to heterosexual to bisexual to gay sexual. I'm within that range of sexuality, but the majority of the time I am asexual. Like, I just don't have sexual attraction towards people. Or to anything. I should specify to anything, because otherwise people are going to be like, to just people, It's like, no, just to anything.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that we could have, I could have jumped in with earlier is because we all were like, none of us know what this term abrosexual means. For anybody who's listening, who has not already taken the time to just Google it, let me do that for you. It basically is the simplest way of describing it seems to be kind of sexuality fluid. You have like gender fluidity, and then this would be a sexuality fluid. So the examples it provides are kind of illustrated by what you just identified of people kind of being bisexual or feeling bisexual at times, and then transitioning to asexual or heterosexual or whatever the case may be. But it changes, as it seems to be the simplest way of describing it. And so yeah, I didn't even know that ever had a term until you introduced it to me.
Yeah. So
and it's one of the things like I think to when you kind of came out, I thought to myself, as somebody who has gone through like long spouts where I'm perfectly content to just be by myself and be more or less asexual, but ultimately I personally, like, I look at that, I'm like, no, I'm just a very lazy heterosexual is really what I am. Is that like the sexual, my heterosexual side never goes away. I just don't act on it or do anything with it for long spouts of time. So but yeah, it was something that like you kind of coming out and kind of discussing it openly got me thinking of like, okay, like is that more of what I'm in? Because I'm also like, in college I had no problem making out with other guys and stuff, but it never went any further than that or anything like that. It was just like, I was in theater, that was what we did. But no, I've always
you play
been
parts where the person you're playing is homosexual, so you kiss other guys.
I mean, there was that, but then there was also just, hey, we're all drunk at parties, let's just make out with whoever's close.
Theater can be like that sometimes.
Yeah, did that a handful of times. So but yeah, no, still, like, ultimately I'm like, no, I'm pretty comfortable in my thinking that I am and continue to be boring old heterosexual white male. But I appreciate that you're kind of encountering this and facing this and kind of opening it up to the rest of us. At least got me to like reevaluate and question, like, hey, am I going through something else, or is there something deeper or more at play? Because if I've never heard of this abrosexual thing before, what other things on the LGBTQ plus spectrum are out there that I've maybe not considered?
There are so many, Trevor.
Absolutely, yeah.
There are so many. Like, in my, like, trying to figure out what I literally walked through, and it's like, no, yeah, yes, but no, yes, no, but yes, definitely no, 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 no. Like, going through all of them, like, so many of them, not even all of them, just through so many of them before I just kind of, it landed on my lap. It's like, oh, no, you're abrosexual. I'm abrosexual. Like, this is what I am. Like, it's kind of like the process of elimination. It was almost like I would compare it almost to like a BuzzFeed quiz of, like, going through the motions of, like, filling out bubble in A here, 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 and here, and it's like, it's not like it was a direct, like, calculation pumping out, like, you're abrosexual, congratulations, like, you are going to have a very confusing life from here on out. It's like, joke's on you, I've had a confusing life for the last 30 years. But for me, like talking about being on that show, like I was calling in to make a joke, like to make a joke question, or to like pull off some Craven Moorhead with like what Stone Mike did. I did not anticipate like just being like, hey, let me ask a question that's like been inside my head for like my entire life, as far as like I've been, especially since I've been cognizant of my sexuality. Like, let me ask that question. So back to Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving was awesome because like I said, it just felt like I was 100% seen by my family. It was a wonderful Thanksgiving. There was no massive fighting, and also my dad did what he does every year, which is he made a amazing turkey where he does the greatest thing in the world, which is he weaves bacon and wraps it in bacon,
Hell
and
yeah.
then he pours kind of like pours enough. Not he doesn't overdo it, but he pours just enough. Usually it's hickory smoked. Sorry, no, it's smoked hickory syrup, and that syrup is like glazed over it, and it's like because it does that, it seals it in, and because the bacon's over it and all the fat in the bacon is absorbing the syrup, the sugars in the syrup, it doesn't get down to the turkey so much. Like a little bit does, but you get like these notes of smoked hickory and the little sweetness of the syrup and the sugars from that. And on top of that, the bacon is served as a garnish. Not a garnish, sorry, as like a side portion. So you can just have like tons of this applewood bacon, like that has been like that tastes like it's been smoked with hickory chips and sweet with sugars, and it's amazing. And my dad makes it every year. And then my brother this year pit roasted a turkey with a bunch of like rosemary and sage and all this other sort of stuff. And it was so tender. My brother, I watched him take it. It was a whole turkey. He literally lifted both the breasts off the bone without any problems and just put them on a plate and then cut them up. Like perfectly off the bone. And both of them just together were amazing. People who don't know this, Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. There's been too much Turkey Day hate this year. I got sick of seeing it. People talking about like, I can't wait till it's Christmas. It's like, this is my time. This is my time. This is my holiday. How dare you?
It was a main topic of conversation on episode 4 of that Nerdy Site show with Logan and Frank sitting down and ranking Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas together.
Thanksgiving
Uh,
was like pretty highly in there, I think, honestly. A
yeah,
lot of
I mean,
love going around.
yeah, I think you guys both enjoy Thanksgiving quite a bit. It's
The thing is,
certainly more than Arbor Day.
Absolutely, dude.
because Arbor Day has failed in its purpose.
Yeah, Arbor Day got a lot of that fuck off hate.
Well, it's a failed holiday. Like, what do you expect?
we,
Yeah,
we yeah, on that we both just kind of arbitrarily picked one holiday to say fuck this one.
yeah, yeah. It was a good fun episode.
There's that. Oh, and then so I think a lot of the hate though comes from people's distaste for turkey. And here's the thing, folks: you don't have to have just turkey as your meat source for Thanksgiving. You can have an awesome ham. I don't care for ham, but my brother loves ham, and so every year we have ham with our meal as well. Do I have any of it? No, because I'm not a heathen. But but also like my family goes all out for Thanksgiving. Like we do all these awesome things where it's like stuff that my siblings have done for years, that me and my siblings have done together for years. Like my brother's wife makes she took my mom's orange roll recipe and now makes it, and it's just so much better than my mom's. Not even throwing shade on my mom's, they were delicious, but Diane's is just so much better, and these orange rolls are just perfect to the point where like I'll just like I can take down like 5 or 6 of them no problem. And they're hefty rolls too. Then there's like then you got the stuffing. My dad always takes like the drippings and stuff. But what he does is he makes the stuffing instead of just having it loose in a bowl. He takes the stuffing after it's been cooked in the turkey. He puts it into like a dish, a glass dish, and then heats it up in the stove to the point where it becomes like a stuffing loaf. And it's just delicious. It's a little dry, but it's crispy that way. So it's crispy, and when you put some gravy on it, it just moistens way back up, and it's just perfect. It's a perfect little side dish to go with it. You just have the classic stuff that I might not be a big fan of. Instead of cranberries, my family does a marshmallow whipped cranberry pomegranate, like it's called like technically it's called a salad, but it is actually a like more like a it's almost like marshmallow fluff with its consistency. But that's served. I'm not a fan of that, just because it's weird and I don't. It creeps me out because they put little pomegranates on the top of it, and that always just weirds me out. Then there's an almond, like they do the same thing but with like almonds, and then they put a little green food dye into it, which also weirds me out. Which once again, I don't mess with that. That's just it's weirding me out. But hey, it's Thanksgiving. It's about a bounty for everybody to enjoy, and I think that's why I enjoy it. There's nothing there's no exclusionary like parts of Thanksgiving. Nobody gets excluded. Like it doesn't matter what you practice in the past. It doesn't matter like what your religion is. It doesn't matter like there's no breakdown like there is for Christmas where you got Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, any of that sort of stuff. It's all about just like this is a meal for us to be a community. It's a meal for us to be together as a family. Some of my favorite Thanksgiving memories are actually when my dad would invite people, and not just a like couple people. Like we bring out like these long tables, long plastic tables, and set them up, and through like almost the entirety of our dining room out through the family room, we would have these tables set up and we would just have people come in, and there were people, they were friends, they were like we had people who like we knew who brought their entire families with them because they otherwise would have like a really small sad Thanksgiving. This was a great way to like reach out to those people who would have had less than on Thanksgiving and kind of like lift them up, have a good enjoyable meal that everybody can have a good time with. And those years my dad made like he would make like 3 or 4 turkeys and a bunch of ham. And like so for me Thanksgiving's really always been not just been about family, but also been about community and really about embracing each other and bringing each other all in. Doesn't mean that we didn't have our fair share of nightmare Thanksgivings, because you always have those. It doesn't matter. You just always have those. Like something happened, politics gets mentioned. Funny enough, politics never got mentioned once, despite the fact that my I can't actually talk about that. Never mind. Sorry. There's some family stuff in regards to military and the current president. So I won't get into that. Let's keep it positive.
Yeah. Well, when we get to my story, I'll definitely dive into a little bit of the more political fueled family drama.
Oh yeah, because you have that in
Yeah.
your family.
Yeah,
Oof.
I've got a good story that I'll dive into from a few years back. But
Oh my
first I
gosh,
want,
that's my favorite story. Okay, never mind.
thanks.
I'll stop.
But yeah, first I want to throw it over
Yeah.
to so, I mean, like I definitely I almost envy the things because you definitely seem to kind of encapsulate like the stereotypical traditional spirit of Thanksgiving of bringing everybody together and having like a great big fun meal that everybody can enjoy in. But Frank, I
Oh,
want
and
to
then
throw it over to
after.
you.
Oh, I was just gonna end it by
Oh,
saying
here,
afterwards we all take a nap or play games, like board games, and then after that we go see a movie.
nice.
That's an
Um,
Abbott Thanksgiving.
so Frank, I wanted to throw it over to you, especially because I'm curious. Of the three of us, obviously, this is a nice little group because we were the Phoenix centric group until you moved away and left us for Austin, Frank. Um, but I'm curious what your life has been like the last couple years away from your family for the holidays. If you like, have you been doing anything for Thanksgiving out there, or is like was Thanksgiving pretty much just a oh well you're not in Phoenix anymore, so Thanksgiving isn't a big thing for you?
Yeah, yeah, and that was definitely kind of what I was thinking about too, because like in the last couple years, I moved away a couple years ago, so I've had several since then, and I guess most of the time I've done mostly, I guess like what people call like the Friendsgiving type thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I guess I've mostly done that since I've moved away here, and like I do love Thanksgiving, but like I never had like that giant necessarily like experience that Cam had. So when I moved away and it was just me, like there wasn't like a ton to try to like recreate or like put back together. But it always like was about kind of like also like Cam said to me, it was always about people getting together in like community and kind of celebrating and enjoying. So I always just tried to replicate that kind of like over here with everybody I've met since I've who kind of like lives here and I've moved here and kind of met since then.
Very
Um,
cool.
like that was even like yesterday, which was yesterday was Thanksgiving at the time where we're recording this, and I had a bunch of people over and just spent like all day in the kitchen and kind of like what even Cam was talking about too. Like I got to make some of those like family recipes that because my family all the way going all the way back since I was a kid has basically just made the same thing like every year, but it's like the like I guess there's like no reason to change, right? Like those are the family recipes.
Yeah, absolutely. We have in my family we have Aunt Char's potatoes, which are, I mean, it's probably just a like a potato casserole kind of thing, but it's like
Do you actually
the
season it though?
it's seasoned with like what like ranch dressing dip or something like that. I it's been a long time since I've made them.
Weird
Having
flex, but okay.
been the bachelor lifestyle for you, and then also cheese on top and stuff. But yeah, it's potatoes, sour cream, onion dip, um, cheese, and then maybe one or two other things that I'm forgetting or something like that. It's I mean like when I first like told other people about it in like high school or something like that, people were like, "Oh yeah, no, that's just like we have that version of potatoes too." But in our family growing up, it was always like, "This is Aunt Char's potatoes." Like after my grandmother's sister, Charlotte. And like that was just like we all really enjoyed those potatoes, so it's like the big holiday tradition. We have it at Thanksgiving, we have it at Easter, we have it at Christmas, and it's like the special thing that like we make for those holidays. Either like my sisters made them, my parents make them. There have been a couple times where I've made them, but as I've lived a largely bachelor-driven life for since like since moving out of my parents' house for the last 16-ish years, it basically like it's I don't have that much kitchen experience outside of like a brief stint doing Blue Apron a lot. So it's just never been like the thing that I've picked up and gone with, but it is like that's our family like contribution to kind of the traditional like turkey and cranberry sauce and whatnot. Oh, and Aunt Char's potatoes is our little add into the mix. But
Nice. So I will say I did have a so when my parents lived in California and my like I mentioned on our last episode, like in the actual episode that we recorded just before this one, I did do a lot of Friendsgivings. One year I was invited to my friend Nate's, well, former roommate Nate's family's Thanksgiving, which is like one of those big, like massive like borderline family reunion Thanksgivings, where it's like the grandparents are hosting the Thanksgiving, so like all the like all the parents, and then also all their children are there, and then also all the grandchildren, and so it was massive. But yeah, no, the Friendsgivings I've had experiences with, and unfortunately, every time I see a potato salad, I'm wary because the chances are is that it is, if it is seasoned at all, it is very lightly seasoned and sometimes not with the right seasoning.
yeah, it's what I'm talking about is definitely not a potato salad kind of thing. It is like a much more of a casserole dish type of thing.
Okay, so something like my family does what we call dirty potato, like dirty mashed potatoes, where basically like we leave like like some a lot of the skin on and stuff like that. So
Mm. Yeah,
We
imagine it's something like that.
we always had this like mashed potato recipe that I consider legendary because of how great it is. But it's basically twice baked potatoes. So you
Oh, nice.
so you like make the potatoes in the oven like regular baked potatoes, and you cut them and you take the insides out and you mix it with like sour cream and bacon and butter and like all kinds of the stuff you normally find like in a baked potato. And you put it back inside like kind of the shell, and you put cheese and bacon on top, and you put them like back in the oven, and they're like the most amazing things ever. And as it's like evolved, as I've been doing it, like I did yesterday, I know I took out the part where you like put them back in the skin and put them in the oven. I basically just make like a giant bowl filled with like the best potatoes.
very cool.
You're a good man, Frank. Those that's not a cheap dish to make. That's for sure.
Oh, my dude, I know. Like I did the whole dinner yesterday, and it can be killer. But I just wanted to like I like cooking from my side. Like I like cooking, and kind of like what Trevor was saying, like being on like the bachelor side, like I feel like I don't have as much need to do it, or it's like why would you make this giant meal just for like a person? But it's cool to have like an excuse to just like I had a bunch of people over and got to make like the potatoes and the stuffing and the turkey and all that fun stuff.
Very cool. Yeah, mine.
This is
My
where we get good. Ooh.
my well, so my traditionally like Thanksgiving in my family was it was the traditional typical like, oh, everybody gets together for turkey and stuffing and all that stuff, and we would every year we would get together at like my grandmother's house, and like she would be really the kind of king of the kitchen there. She'd have the turkey going in her oven from the 60s, and the like electric stove top had everything else going. And then as her health started to decline in the last 10, 15-ish years, like my parents took it on, or my sister started taking it on at her house, but it was still the same kind of like dishes and mentality and stuff. And it would always be my grandfather would show up, and that was one of the few times the year like we would see my grandfather, because he and my grandmother got divorced when I was like 2 or 3. And so he was around, but like basically he's on the other side of town, and as the three of us know here in Phoenix, given that we are all scattered around town, like he lives up in Deer Valley, which is like 30 minutes away from like my house, and
Jeez.
so if you don't want to go and see that person, you don't have to go and see that person. So he was very rarely around when we were growing up.
Like that's farther outside of Phoenix than where I work. Jeez.
Yeah. So I mean, like as it is, I live 4 miles south of my parents and only see them like once, twice, maybe a week, or like once, twice a month, maybe, kind of thing. Sorry.
Trevor and I used to live 10 minutes away from each other, and we used to only see each other at like kind of funny lives and conventions. If that
Yeah,
gives you an idea of how much Trevor sees other people.
yeah. It's just like it's it's the thing about Phoenix is that it grows out, not up. So like everybody is like, yeah, it's quick enough to get anywhere through the freeways and stuff, but if you don't want to do that travel, you don't have to do that travel. So we started doing uh, like family dinners and stuff at my sister's house a few years back, and again, like that was one of the few times my grandfather would show up. Would be kind of the Thanksgiving or Christmas holidays, Easter as well and stuff. And my grandfather would get to the point, especially in the lead up to the 2016 election, really all throughout all the Obama years, he would constantly like be the guy talking politics at everything. And my family predominantly like falls under like Republican in their like fiscally conservative. So they're socially more like uh,
Progressive.
progressive, but specifically like the money wins out for them, and specifically because they have property, a lot of times like the it feels like, and I have to be careful as well because I'm realizing that my mom is a patron and she might listen to the episode. So if you're listening, mom, sorry, I mean no ill will in sharing these stories and stuff. But yeah, like my family when I grew up, like we were a Republican household, and it wasn't until like late high school, early college that I really started becoming more democratic and independent and stuff. Um, and so during the Obama years, my grandfather would always spew pretty much every single Fox and Friends talking point that he could throw at me. And as like one of the people who was actually trying to stay up with politics in the family, whereas like a lot of the family just kind of didn't care, it wasn't their thing. I would kind of push back, or if I wasn't pushing back, I was saying I'm not going to respond to that because I don't like. I would pull out my phone and try and like fact check what he's talking about rather than like immediately respond, and all that stuff. Um, but it got so he respected that I would push back, and like I think he would often joke that I was like the smartest liberal he knew kind of thing. Um, but it was always a matter of time. Like, oh, when I got my job at the community foundation, was suddenly making more money. Oh, now I'm finally going to be conservative because I'm going to be making more money and I'm not going to want to pay that money in taxes and stuff. What he failed to realize was like I'm working at a philanthropic institution. I've always been philanthropic. I have no problem with my money going and supporting like the greater good kind of stuff. So my liberalness continued to shine through, and the year of the 2016 election, um, for a number of circumstances, I think largely driven by the fact that like my mom and my dad were going on a cruise over actual Thanksgiving. our family Thanksgiving we decided to celebrate a couple weeks early, which just happened to fall the weekend after Trump won the election. So it was a banner day for my grandfather to, who all through like the primary stuff had talked so much shit about Trump, and he was constantly in the like Trump is the worst, and he's the worst thing that could happen to that. But as soon as he won the nomination, he immediately fell in line, as so many people that we've seen in the Republican Party did. Um, and so my sister, trying to like prevent any animosity and stuff, hung up a sign outside the outside her door that year saying like no politics inside the house. And so
Wait, she
when
actually made a sign?
yeah, she made a sign on like butcher paper basically and hung it up on her front door. It said like like Trevor and Grandpa, no politics talk inside the house. And but like it was with the understanding that hey, if you want to talk politics, you can talk politics out back and stuff. And so that was what we did. We and for a while we were very civil about it. We were talking about kind of the election results and all that stuff. But he continued to harp, even though his guy has won the election at this point, and he continued to harp on like Hillary being a crook and all that stuff. And so we talked through everything, and then finally dinner's ready, and so like we go inside to eat, and before we sit down, he asked me like to step outside for one more question he wanted to ask me. I was like, I'm good. Let's just eat the meal, and we can talk about it after the fact. So we eat and we go through the meal and all that stuff, and it was a great Thanksgiving meal. When we finally go back outside, he asked something to the effect of like, um, if I acknowledge if Obama like pardoned Hillary Clinton for her emails and all that stuff, like would that change my opinion of Hillary? And I was like, that's a moot hypothetical. Whereas at this point, Joe Arpaio had literally just been convicted. So I said, like, if if Trump pardons Joe Arpaio, like, is that going to? Will you then accept that Joe Arpaio did something wrong, kind of thing? Because and the
That's a
details.
very Arizona thing. That's a
Yeah,
very Arizona thing.
yeah, the
Oh,
details
for
have
sure.
faded a little bit, but
basically,
very
yeah.
much like it all boiled down to Arpaio, notorious and got into spent millions and millions of Arizona taxpayer money fighting lawsuits because of his more racist policies and stuff. But what actually finally got him was like being held in contempt of court. To all
He's
of
now
that, like
pardoned. He has now
and
been
and he
pardoned.
and he has since been pardoned since all of this happened. Yeah, that was the thing I thought of most was like thinking back to this day when Trump actually did pardon Arpaio. But basically, like it turned into like it elevated into talking about well, like no, Arpaio is wrong for his policies because he's very racist. And my grandfather was like, no, he's not. He's not being racist. I was like, he's absolutely being racist. And I started to kind of detail the stuff. And he's like, it's not racist if they actually commit more crimes and they're doing. And I'm like, they don't commit more
Oh
crimes.
my gosh!
White
Oh
people
no!
commit more crimes. You're just like you're like your argument is based off of a racist lie kind of thing. He's like, are you calling me racist? And it blew up from there to the point. I basically I don't remember which happened first at this point, but he we got in each other's face, and he ultimately like punched me. He threw a punch at my shoulder, a very weak punch.
He's an old
Like
man.
he's an old man, and he definitely like pulled the punch. But like he physically attacked me, and I was like, all right, that's it. Like I'm so done with this. Like, and I basically go off into a rant about how the only reason I've been putting up with his shit for all these years is to stay in the will and his good graces. But it's not worth it anymore. I'm done with him. I don't ever need to talk to him again. This is not worth my time. The whatever like inheritance from this miserly old asshole is not worth my time anymore. And so I basically like write him off and walk away, and like basically like go inside because it has been like me and him, and I think maybe like my aunt was outside kind of witness to the whole thing. But basically like walk in ready to like leave the house, um and basically tell people as I pass, like, yeah, he punched me, so I'm done. I'm going. Everybody have a great Thanksgiving. I'm sorry. I just can't be around him anymore, and I refuse to be around him anymore in the future and stuff. And ultimately, like, my mom caught me at the car, and we talked. I basically talked to her through everything that just happened, and while I was doing that, like, my sister basically like told my grandfather to leave. So my grandfather ends up leaving the house before I do, and to this day, that is the last time I've seen him. I've basically refused to be involved with him at family functions and family get-togethers. He is very much like out of my life at this point as a result of all of this stuff. And it as a result of that schism, like the family dinners and stuff that we've had, like the family sided more or less with me in this, in that like I have family dinners with them and he is not invited. In the few instances that they have gotten together with him, it's like, oh, they'll get together with him and go to like church for Christmas or something like that, and then they're gonna say bye to him, and then I'll see, the people afterwards or something like that, or we'll do things on like different days or something like that. But that is the iconic Thanksgiving story that sits with me, and it's very much like all of the worst things of Thanksgiving, of that like stereotypical racist relative that's saying all of the racist things, and I finally just reached a breaking point and didn't put up with it anymore, and so yeah, as a result of that 2016 Thanksgiving, I have not seen or talked to my grandfather since then, and it's been like, especially at like watching how the Trump era has played out, and seeing things like him pardoning Arpaio and all this stuff. I'm just like, I'm there's like a morbid curiosity to see if my grandfather still would defend everything that he's doing, and ultimately I'd just probably assume that he would, because that's the kind of man that he was. He was just an angry old miser, and I'm so much better off not having him around anymore. But
You
it
said it
happened.
was. He's still alive, right? He's not
Yes,
dead.
yes. He's
Okay.
he's still alive.
You're
Yeah, I
starting
just.
to use was terms, and I'm like, we should
Oh yeah,
probably
no.
clarify he's
What
not
was
dead.
was in terms of like I have not talked to him or seen him in over 3 years now. Um, and
Trevor, what you're feeling around your neck right now, I've just given you the medal for the best worst Thanksgiving story.
thank you.
Yeah,
Um,
you win. You
yeah,
win.
it
You
like
win family Thanksgiving.
because in the like I certainly myself, the way I recount the story at this point, is certainly putting myself more in a positive light, because I certainly egged him on in the moment and stuff, um and called him out for racism and stuff like that, and said he was like a shitty person, and I think I threatened to punch him, but I wasn't actually going to punch him because, hey, he's the kind of guy that would have gone to the police or something and tried to like press charges against like me for assaulting.
Well, that's
And
B. A is that you're not going to punch an old man.
Yeah, there is that too. But I definitely like I'm the one who got in his face to give him the opportunity to punch me, basically. If
Yeah.
I recall correctly. There's an old Trevor Trove post I think about this, or a Trevor Trove vlog or something. So I'm sure I could go and like find the details the night of that I wrote, like when it was all significantly more fresh in my mind. But yeah, that is my Thanksgiving like memory, is like in large part I think fueled by the fact that so many of my other Thanksgivings were just kind of like they were what you normally think of or see in a traditional Thanksgiving, of like, oh, the family got together, we got around the table, we ate turkey, we ate mashed potatoes or stuffing and all that stuff. But and then like my grandfather in particular, was the one who would go and like watch the ASU game or whatever football game was going on my grandmother's couch, and he would like sleep it off while the rest of us would just talk and visit, and then like eventually leave and so like we were gone before he would even wake up. So even at these things where he was like present, he was barely present. So it's one of the like main reasons that when I think back on all of that stuff, I'm like, I it's not a loss, and it's a thing that was a long time coming, because he was such an absentee grandfather throughout like my childhood and just even early adult life. Um, So, yep, that's my Thanksgiving memory to to round out the trio. Uh, yeah.
I think we got
I,
the full
I
spectrum
think we
of
yeah I think we've got
Thanksgiving.
a nice full spectrum. We got like the very wholesome, loving one with Cam. We've got the friendsgiving aspect with Frank, and then we've got the like racist relative who posts stuff on Facebook with me. And that's like he doesn't have Facebook, and I'm so grateful for that because it would have just made him a million times worse. But as it was, just every time he would like quote Bill O'Reilly or Fox and Friends or something like that, I was just like, I can't even try with you on
Bill
some of these things.
O'Reilly, like civilly convicted sex pervert.
Yeah,
That's the person you want to quote.
wasn't at the time though. So that's another thing is like there's another one where like that was
And
one
sorry,
of
not sex
his
pervert. Sexually like harassing monster
yeah
of a person. So
yeah. But yeah, like all of those people like he idolized and looked up to have just like one after another just been like like revealed and convicted for being total shitbags kind of thing. So
yep.
I don't miss him, but figured it makes an interesting enough story for this conversation. So
But that's what I like about the Friendsgivings more, is because I guess you can kind of like avoid that for the most part. At least like
Yeah.
hopefully. Like I guess it could still definitely happen.
that's
So
certainly
what Trevor doesn't know is that the night that this happened, I had actually had a very frustrating like family meal with my family that Sunday
I think
or
I
like
might
that
have as
day.
well based on the
Yeah.
timeline.
And after that frustration, like it wasn't anything like bad. It was just like, oh, this has become frustrating because of course it was after the election. When you live like I'm a registered independent, like did not like was super frustrated over the election, like many people out there. And you know, I come from people don't know this. I come from a split house, like politically split household. My mom's a Democrat, and my dad's a Republican, and they've been married for 43 years and going. Like that's like they work. I like they have. There's a secret of trust and love in that marriage that just like eludes basic like common sense is like you probably shouldn't marry somebody who's of the opposite like almost everything of you. But they do a great job of having a wonderful marriage. But it was a tough time because of the post election. It was during a time when a lot of things were really scary for people, and I didn't know it at the time, but it was scary for me because it was a scary time for the LGBT because Mike Pence became vice president. People who don't know, Mike Pence hates the gays vehemently, and also he's the kind of person who thinks he can't be left alone in a room with a woman because who knows what he might do under the influence of the devil.
yeah
Yeah, so
big old sexist, big old homophobe.
I'm sorry, we shouldn't inject this episode with so much politics. I realized.
I mean, politics is a key element of many people's Thanksgiving memories. So
That is true. So I guess that kind of fulfills it.
yeah,
But no, I think it was interesting because I had had a frustrating dinner with my family, and then I see this text, and like you're like, my grandfather just punched me, so that's happened, and I'm like, and I think my first tweet or text to you was like, do you need me to come bail you out?
yeah, yeah. That was because I think that the joke had like the joke I had tweeted out that day before going out was like, well, I'm going to Thanksgiving like an early Thanksgiving dinner, so if I end up in jail, it's because of the election or something like that.
That's right. And I
Um,
said, I'll like send me like maybe your first call, I'll come bail you
yeah,
out.
and so yeah, when the events of the evening actually occurred, and my grandfather was the one who punched me, I was like, oh well, this works against what I tweeted out earlier, I guess. Yeah. Uh, Thanksgiving, a an often complicated holiday, um, and I think we've captured that pretty well here. So, so yeah, I think that can wrap up this fun little early access patron episode. Thank you guys for joining me this week, Cameron and Frank. Cameron, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, no, everything you can find me for, I'm at Rev Cabot on Twitter, the Instagrams, everything else. I put up articles a couple times a month over on handsomephantom.com. They'll probably, once again, I've been kind of increasing my load of stories I've been doing for them. You'll be seeing some stuff coming out later this month with that nerdy site. I think we'll see. I have to actually sit down and like write these things out. That's otherwise it's not going to happen. So That being said, no, I don't have anything right now. That's a long way of saying no, I don't have anything.
Cool. Anything you want to plug, Frank?
Everybody can follow me everywhere at Irrelevant Jokes, and I guess that's probably it for me.
Cool. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey, and depending on when you're listening to this, there's probably stuff up on the website. So I'm realizing that like these bonus episodes are more of like evergreen-ish stuff. So probably got to figure out how to handle these intros and outros differently than the regular weekly show. But you can follow all of us at That Nerdy Site. You can check out thatnerdysite.com for the latest of everything we're doing. If we're doing any Twitch streaming, you can follow that at twitch.tv/thatnerdysite. And thank you all who are listening to this the month it goes out for being Patreon supporters. If you are not a Patreon supporter hearing this after the fact, please consider hopping on to patreon.com/thatnerdysite and supporting us over there. Every one of our patrons gets a month early access to each of these kind of bonus monthly episodes of the show. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this first like weird episode of That Nerdy Site show. So thank you again, guys, for joining me. Thank you for listening, and as always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.